Hello biology students, today we're going to be talking about cellular respiration, and as you can see from this image, that's all about the mitochondria. Look at those M folds in this little bean-shaped organelle. Alright, let's jump in. So when we talk about cellular respiration, a lot of times students accidentally think that cellular respiration is only done by a few types of organisms. That's not true! Cellular respiration is done by all living things. What? All living things do cellular respiration. I'll say it again. All of them! Well, that means plants, fungi, bacteria, animals, and protists. They all need that quick energy currency called ATP. So they all need to do this chemical reaction. All of them need that energy battery to do everyday cell processes or life processes as a multicellular organism if they are multicellular. Every single one of them needs ATP, so every single one of them does cellular respiration. Notice that sometimes cellular respiration will be abbreviated because it's a long, long word. So where does cellular respiration happen? Well, it happens in the mitochondria. And both plants and animals, if we remember back to our cells unit, have mitochondria. So they're both doing cellular respiration. They're both making ATP. So make sure you know plants are doing this too. Plants are doing this too. There are two major types of cellular respiration. The first type we're going to talk about is called anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic has no oxygen. Remember, that prefix "an" means without. So anaerobic, without oxygen. A synonym for anaerobic respiration is fermentation. All right? So I like to think of this as without air. Anaerobic. Versus aerobic respiration is with oxygen, sounds like the word air. So those are the two major types, and the biggest difference is whether or not oxygen is around. And we're going to talk about this weird one more. All right? So the other thing we have to understand is one of these is a lot better at making energy out of sugar molecules, the food molecule that we get energy from. And so as we convert the food molecule, sugar or glucose, to ATP, anaerobic only makes 2 ATP versus aerobic makes 36. So which one's better at converting the energy? Aerobic. So it's a lot better to have oxygen if possible. The anaerobic is a much quicker process. It's only 1 step, and the aerobic is 3 steps. Which one is common for humans? Anaerobic is not very common for humans. It's only if we start exercising hard and we start to not be getting enough oxygen. I'm running track. I'm not getting enough oxygen. I might start to get some anaerobic respiration happening. We'll talk about that in a moment. Mostly, most multicellular organisms rely on aerobic with oxygen because we're big multicellular things. We need big amounts of ATP, so we need oxygen. We will practice this in class, but let's move on to what is really this weird thing that we don't hear so much about, this without oxygen business. So two types of anaerobic respiration or fermentation are the following. One type actually happens to us humans. Look at this guy. He ran way too hard. So he's right now has lactic acid in his legs because he did some lactic acid fermentation. Humans do this, and that whole process produces lactic acid. And it's because he exercised so much that he used up all the available oxygen he was breathing, and he was pushing himself to the max, and he ended up doing a little bit of extra respiration in his mitochondria without oxygen, and because of that he got acid in his legs. But it allowed him to probably get a personal record or best in his race or activity he was doing. There's also alcoholic fermentation. Other types of organisms that are fungal, like yeast or bacteria, do this process. This process doesn't make lactic acid because it's not called that. It's called alcoholic fermentation. So this type of without oxygen anaerobic respiration makes the product alcohol and also carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a bubbling kind of fizzy gas, and so we actually utilize this process when we make a lot of foods. We actually use yeast in making bread, and the nice smell that bread makes as it cooks is actually the alcohol burning off. And the way bread rises is because carbon dioxide is being given off. So we use both of these processes a lot in making food. Kimchi is made with lactic acid fermentation. Yogurt's made with lactic acid fermentation. Bread, wine, and beer are made with alcohol fermentation. So lots of really interesting ways that we use these types of processes as humans when we make food. Yep. Last but not least, just like with photosynthesis, you do need to memorize an equation, but I'm going to promise you it's not going to be quite as hard because you're an expert now on equations. So here's the equation. We have this guy, which we remember is what? Glucose, plus this guy is oxygen. Those are our reactants, and we have products, CO2, carbon dioxide, water, and ATP. So the interesting thing that we'll see here is all of these were on the other side for photosynthesis, and all of these were on the other side for photosynthesis. This looks very familiar. It looks like photosynthesis backwards. So here's our two equations. Here is photosynthesis on top, and here is cellular respiration on the bottom. Guess what? Those equations are very much related. They're opposites, all right? The reactants of one process are the products of the other. They make a cycle. So really, they're not that hard to remember. We have energy on both. It's just one is sunlight and one is ATP. Otherwise, they're exactly opposites. So you do have to practice this, but it's not going to be hard. Great job, guys.